living to rise again. This is Patrick Riggins. You are tuned into the most consistent, most logical, and most reasoned radio show on the dial. Weekly, daily, monthly, doesn't matter. This show tops them all. And that's why you eagerly tune in here each week to hear what you aren't going to hear anywhere else. And that's common sense. That's really all it is. Common sense applied to the issues. Seems amazing to me that a show can be this successful when that's really all we're doing. Also tells you a little bit about the lack of common sense in America today. And I guess this show is really more than that, though. It's an education about what made this country great. The great American ideals of freedom and liberty. Those twin towers upon which our great American experiment have been built. How do you know that's what our country is built on? Well, despite what the media and the conservatives and the liberals, what they might tell you, it's just look at what these people attack or what they put under attack, even by those who would want to remake this country into a more government-centric, more tyrannical, centrally controlled state. It's freedom and liberty. That's what they attack. Why would they attack freedom if it wasn't the bedrock of this country? They would just be wasting their time. It would be like, in order to try and keep someone from driving their car to work, you're going to let the air out of their lawnmower tires. It has nothing to do with them driving the car. Same thing with freedom. If it wasn't something this country was built on, then the people trying to remake this country wouldn't bother with it. It'd be irrelevant. But, bother with it, they do. In fact, every day they are trying to remove more of your freedoms so that the government can take an even bigger role in your life. If you question that, just ask yourself this. What are the chances of getting the original Bill of Rights passed through Congress today? Maybe, slim to none? Can you imagine the restrictions the government would impose on us? They do it now without constitutional authority. So you can imagine what they would do if given the chance to rewrite the Bill of Rights. Not only the Second Amendment, but the freedom of the press would be severely curtailed. Just look at what Eric Holder has been up to with this whole AP situation, and now even Fox News. You wouldn't have any rights at all if it were up to the government. Even now, if you're deemed a terrorist by the government, and incidentally, they won't tell you how they come to that conclusion. The administration won't release the criteria that they can use to designate you a terrorist. But if you are given that designation, not only can you not fight it because you aren't given the chance in a court of law, but even if you were, the government has demonstrated already it will claim national security privilege in court, stating they cannot tell you how they know you're guilty, that you have or were plotting to do something, only that they have evidence that, hey, neither you nor the court is allowed to see. Sounds like something from almost a third world nation or a trial in the old U.S.S.R. It's scary, but that is happening right here in our country by our own government against our fellow citizens. We sit over here and talk about it, but it's all academic fun and games until it's you sitting in court. That is, if you even can get a trial, since terrorists aren't given a speedy trial, nor even allowed to see family or a lawyer. Doesn't that sound, just like a free country to you? Yeah, me neither. Sounds more like a banana republic, run by some despot, hell-bent on staying in power. The only difference is, instead of it being just one dictator you have to deal with, one huge ego, we're fighting against a whole government that's just hell-bent on staying in power, staying in control. No matter which side you're on, Republican or Democrat, they've all signed on to this government knows best train, and they're taking us all for a ride, whether we want to go or not. If the past few weeks haven't convinced you we have major problems in this government, I really don't know what will. We have had the IRS and Lois Lerner. She's saying, I'm not going to testify, but I'm giving a speech. Now I plead the fifth. But I haven't done anything wrong. Now, and it's come up now that the IRS has also been targeting families who have adopted children because they, gasp, they claimed an adoption credit. How dare they? Depriving the government of that revenue. There are just so many criminal things happening in this administration that we lose track of them all. It's just whatever is happening at the time. Everything else just seems like another one in the line of stuff here. Like we've had Fast and Furious. We've had just lately the IRS, the AP scandal, drone attacks. In fact, we're going to talk about Eric Holder admitting to killing Americans with those drone attacks. You can't blame Bush for all of that. You can't blame the Republicans in Congress. 100% of these problems could either be directly solved or 99% of the problem taken care of by the president if he wanted to. He certainly has no problem trying to take away our gun rights. As soon as we have a shooting somewhere or some idiot goes on a rampage, that's the first thing they want to do. He's trying his best through the executive branch to trample your rights when it comes to that. So if he can turn around and make all these speeches and bring families up there and try to push for this gun control and get that through, which he didn't, of course, but he uses the executive branch to try and implement gun control without going through Congress. So he can do all this other stuff, but somehow the Fast and Furious, IRS, AP scandal, all this stuff, that's out of his hands. What this comes down to is President Obama is either a criminal or he's incompetent. It's one or the other. Either all this stuff has been going on with his knowledge, if not outright approval, and that makes him complicit in criminal activity, or he doesn't have control of the executive branch of government. And that's his responsibility in government, the branch of which he is the head, the executive branch. He doesn't have control, thus making him incompetent. So he needs to choose, along with his supporters, well, which one is he? Either if he knows what's going on, like I said, then he's involved, complicit in criminal activity. And if he doesn't know what's going on, then he's demonstrating incompetency in his job. Either way, it doesn't say a whole lot for the president. But I digress. Coming up on the show this week, we have Eric Holder. As I mentioned before, he's admitted they have murdered American citizens with drone attacks. And if you don't realize how big a thing that is, that's admitting this government, the United States government, has engaged in the outright premeditated murder of Americans. So we'll have that. That was in a letter to Congress. Also some stuff about igniting the fire of liberty, something that we used to have in this country, and much more fun here on the Patrick Regan Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. And when we come back, it'll probably be a couple of minutes here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. And welcome back to the Patrick Regan Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. Parked right now on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Our new home for those of you who may have come over from the other station and were looking around for us. It's not like we didn't announce it, so glad you're here finally. Well, this segment, what I want to get into is this whole thing with Eric Holder. It finally happened this week. If you check our Facebook page, and you should, you had a heads up on this story already. Attorney General Eric Holder admitted that we have killed American citizens with drone strikes. Now, think about that for a minute. He is admitting the president has authorized the murder of American citizens. Premeditated murder at that. Something that would have you, an ordinary citizen, you would be tried and sentenced to prison, and possibly even death. But if you're the president or anyone else in government, oh, well, then that's okay. Even the person carrying out the orders is guilty. We learned that from the Nuremberg trials after World War II. Just saying you were doing your job, it isn't an excuse. So we have a top government official admitting that there is a whole line of people who participated in the premeditated murder of an American citizen, and no one's calling for a trial. In fact, the president gives a speech and tries to do his best Bill Clinton imitation. That look Mr. Clinton used when he told us back in the 90s, I tried as hard as I could not to raise your taxes. I worked as hard as I ever have. Now, years later, we have Obama doing the same thing. Killing Americans pains me. Oh, okay. If you feel bad about it, then the press will give you a pass. He doesn't do like Bush did. He doesn't do it with a smile, and at least not in public. Bush seemed happy about it. But this president, he feels bad about it. So it's okay. Killing American citizens without a trial, without being given a chance to be heard in a court of law, without a chance to answer the accusations with which they have been charged. So denying someone their rights that's okay if it pains you to do so. Then it's okay. Here's part of the speech the president gave this week concerning this, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard it already, but here's a little clip of it. Here's how he started that speech.
For over 2 centuries, the United States has been bound together by founding documents that defined who we are as Americans and served as our compass through every type of change.
Really? We're bound together by the founding documents that have served as our compass. I assume he includes the Constitution, that being one of the most important founding documents, yet he doesn't obey it. Now, further down into the speech, the president actually seems to have been listening to this radio show.
So America's at a crossroads. We must define the nature and scope of this struggle, or else it will define us. We have to be mindful of James Madison's warning that no nation could preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare. Neither I nor any president can promise the total defeat of terror. We will never erase the evil that lies in the hearts of some human beings, nor stamp out every danger to our open society.
Did he just call him Jane Madison? Let's listen to that again real quick.
We have to be mindful of James Madison's warning.
Yeah, I believe he is. I believe he's saying Jane Madison.
James Madison's.
Yeah, Jane Madison. Not surprising, since President Obama, I'm sure, finds Mr. James Madison's views on limited government repugnant. But back to what the president was talking about, that he cannot promise the total defeat of terror, that you cannot erase the evil that lies in the hearts of some human beings. And you would think, as speechwriter, you'd think he'd been listening to me. Unless you have specific information, you can't guarantee safety anywhere. Why isn't this being broadcast everywhere? Because it doesn't fit the template of everyone needing government in their lives to take care of them, to watch over them, to mother them. And that's just the latest clip we came up with. I found literally pages of references that I've made to this very point on this show over the past year. You can go out to our YouTube channel and you can hear them, youtube.com/Patrick Reagan Show. That latest clip was from the segment on the Boston bombing from April 21st show of this year. But the president, what he's telling us is he cannot totally protect everyone in a free society, that we must define the nature and scope of this struggle. Where in the world has he been for the past 5 years? What happened to all those promises he made to scale all this back when he first ran for office? So let's see, you told me you were going to do certain things and then didn't do them. Now you're coming back to the American people and singing the same old song. And here's an approach, and it's a new and innovative approach. Stop singing. I don't care. You don't have to tell me that you want to close Gitmo. You don't have to tell me that you want to pull us out of all these conflicts. Just do it. You're the president. Do it. Stop blaming everyone else for your inactivity. You always run into these types of people. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to stop smoking. Well, stop talking and do it. What are you waiting for? The problem with this type of thing, and the president knows this, a large percentage of voters will only listen to his words. They aren't going to follow up to see if he does it. They have too much to do in their life as it is. They don't have time to make sure the president isn't yanking them around. Although they should follow up, they should email, should write their congressional representatives, but they don't. And if the president can get up there and talk a good game, well, that's good enough for them and the media. He's trying to do something. I guess if he doesn't succeed, well, that must be Bush's fault here 5 years later, or something the Republicans in Congress are doing. But he's trying, and that's all that matters. Even if he really isn't, doesn't matter. He's saying he is, and that's good enough. So I guess with all this talk about pulling our soldiers out of Afghanistan, we won't be interfering with other countries so much. Well, hold on there, cowboy. He wants to be sure you know we aren't doing something so smart as that. Just listen to this next clip.
And while we are vigilant for signs that these groups may pose a transnational threat, most are focused on operating in the countries and regions where they are based. And that means we'll face more localized threats like what we saw in Benghazi or the BP oil facility in Algeria.
How can we face those threats if we aren't over there trying to run their internal affairs? It's because we are going to continue sticking our noses into these other countries, trying to pick their leaders and trying to influence their elections. The very things that make the citizens of those countries so aggravated with us, doing the very things we tell other countries not to do. We tell Al-Qaeda to stop trying to influence and impose Sharia law in a country, even if the majority of the citizens vote for that. Then turn around and try to put leaders in those offices who agree with us, but may not hold the majority of support within the country. Now, because of that, we end up arming these same leaders so they can subdue or kill the parts of the population who don't agree with the ruling class. Same thing really that's happening in this country. We have a small group of people who think they know better than we do how to run our own lives. They pass laws and regulations that don't have majority support. And if you don't like it, tough. We'll make you like it because we have the guns. And if we can get yours away from you, we'll get our way even quicker. The president even mentioned this type of thinking in his speech. Here is another clip.
America's confronted many forms of violent extremism in our history. Deranged or alienated individuals, often U.S. citizens or legal residents, can do enormous damage, particularly when inspired by larger notions of violent jihad.
Well, what the president wants you to be on notice for is this. Anything, and I mean anything, done against the United States government will be considered terrorism, and you'll lose your constitutional rights. The head of the CIA said practically the same thing in his congressional testimony during his confirmation. That's in our archives as well, youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show. Go listen to it. Just scroll down to the listings to the CIA hearings. Listen to that clip or that segment in there, and you'll hear a clip of John Brennan practically admit it's okay and even legal to kill American citizens within this country without a trial if they have been deemed terrorists by the government. I don't have time to get into it today, but you can listen to that whole segment there on, like I said, youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show. Back to my point, not only crimes against the government, but crimes against others within this country. If they can paint those with the terrorism brush, they'll do it because it gets more Americans used to calling criminal acts, used to calling them terrorism now. And you don't have to read a terrorist his rights. You can kill him outright. No trial, no chance to dispute the charges, nothing. And the American people will applaud the murderers for keeping the rest of us citizens safe, thus making it easier and easier to carry out more killings in the name of defeating terrorism. There's a lot more to this speech and a lot more President was talking about. I just don't have time to get to it all in this 1 hour show here on the weekend. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it or don't have any time because it lasts almost an hour, then you can Google the speech transcript and just read it over, because you can read faster than Obama can speak it. And, because your brain can read quicker than your ears can hear. And besides, the president really likes taking what I think he sees as dramatic pauses. All the clips we use on this show, we have to cut out all the long pauses because, well, it's just plain annoying. Taking those long pauses, I believe, is supposed to make you think he's contemplating his words carefully, but he's reading them off a teleprompter. We all know that. Everyone even makes fun of it. Yet I'm sure his advisors tell him it makes him look thoughtful and smarter by doing so. Just shows you shouldn't listen to what everyone around you is telling you. Sometimes it's better to think for yourself. That's something I advocate on this show weekly. Anyway, we're up on the bottom of the hour break here on the Patrick Regan Show. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about igniting that fire of liberty, and we'll also have a special little Memorial Day segment coming up in the second half of the exciting Patrick Regan Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. Welcome back to the Patrick Regan Show. Jay, who is this?
That is, if you hadn't asked me, I could have told you.
It's test time.
Oh, no.
All your friends are screaming at the radio right now.
I know they are. I know. And crap.
That shows you right here. This show's not scripted.
It's right on the tip of my Wolf Mother. That's who it is.
Wolf Mother.
That's what I had. Okay. I had to think for a minute. Yeah.
Oh, I had never heard of them, but sounds good.
You can catch. There's a certain director-producer that is a big Wolf Mother fan, and in like all his movies, there's usually a Wolf Mother song in there. He's the same guy that did Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis, and there's some other movies he's done, and you can always catch a Wolf Mother song. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I'll have to Google that.
You can put that right in the category of needless information back in the back of your brain.
Yeah. Well, you could probably put some of my show in that category.
Mum's the word.
Yeah. So go out, but don't do it now. You can go listen to Wolf Mother at 5:00. Anyway, welcome back to the Patrick Regan Show here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI, our new home for the show here, along with the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. People ask me why I do this show, and it's so I can increase my education as far as music's concerned. But one of the reasons I do this show is education. I mean, there's definitely an educational component to this show. I want you to learn about what made this country great, which is freedom. It's not the freedom the government tells you have. It's the freedom you used to have. What I want to ignite within you is this fire of liberty, this desire to return to the days when you had much more freedom in this country. Can you imagine transporting someone from 1776 to our present day, what they would say about the freedom of this country compared to then? I think they would be horrified at what this country has become, how directed and involved the government has become in your daily life. Just throw aside all the technological advantages we have now. Just think about the freedom component only, how much freedom they had versus what we have now. They would laugh at the fact that we have to ask the government's permission for anything. Thinking about it, I bet the technological adaptation would be easier to swallow than the tyrannical society in which we now live. Humans are pretty adaptive when it comes to technology and understanding seemingly mystical devices. Look at how some of the indigenous tribes in Central and South America are able to interface with modern society, yet they can still retreat back to the jungle or what's remaining of it to live their, quote, normal lives. They're not scared of airplanes. They're not shooting arrows at those big metal birds. They don't shrink back with fear at the magical voices coming in over a telephone line. At first, I'm sure they didn't understand new technology. They may have thought something supernatural was happening, but it doesn't take long for them to figure out nothing is evil with the new technology. It isn't like spirits doing all this stuff. But tell that tribesman that he has to get permission to hunt game in the jungle or get a permit before he can build his home or have an inspector check it before he can move in. That is what would shock him. And I'm sure he would also tell you what you can do with all that. Same thing with someone from 1776. They would marvel at how far man has come, the technological advancements, how much we can do now. But the most shocking thing would be the amount of freedom and liberty that has gone. These ideas that him and his friends had fought for, ideas for which he probably had relatives laid their lives down. These ideas are a mere shadow of what they once were. That's why I say libertarian principles, libertarian thinking, these are the true original American ideals on which this country was founded. Not conservatives telling you who you can or cannot marry, not liberals telling you whether or not you can carry your guns around. In reality, both of these people, both conservatives and liberals, they want to boss you around. The only difference is the matter of degree. I challenge you to find a conservative who says you can carry a gun anywhere you want, no matter what, anywhere. In that same vein, I challenge you to find a liberal who believes you should be able to exercise your freedom of speech no matter what you're saying. Both of these sides will say, you can carry a gun as long as you do it in a way we agree with, or you can say whatever you want as long as you aren't saying something they disagree with, at least in an effective and convincing manner. If people start listening to you, if you start filling people's heads with thoughts of freedom and liberty, now you're dangerous, and they'll try to minimize the impact you're making. They'll call you kooky or crazy. If you don't believe me, just look at what both sides, conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, look at what both sides have called Dr. Ron Paul at various times. He makes just too much sense. He employs you to think for yourself. To government-centric people, and that's who these people in government are, it doesn't matter whether there's an R or a D or even an I after their name. If they believe in government solutions to any and all problems, even the ones they make up, then they don't like you thinking for yourself, using common sense, because government doesn't use common sense. The problem is there are simply too many people whose business is government. And like any business, it is going to try and expand, try to defeat the competition. Too many people have a vested interest in having government as big as possible, to pull in as many resources as it can. I talked about this last week on the show, government being like a plant that's taking over your garden. It's sucking up all the resources, all the water and nutrients. So all the other plants in the garden are eventually crowded out and die. Government's not supposed to be like this. It isn't supposed to be like a business or a career for people. The main difference between the two, government and business, is government can take away your freedom and liberty. Government can spy on you wherever you are. Now, private business can't. If a private business is recording what you're doing while you're in their store or on someone's private property, if you don't like it, you can leave. Just walk out of the store. Stay off that person's private property. Stay out of their restaurant. You have the freedom to do that. But when the government does it, you have to leave the country to get away. And even then, you aren't far away from the United States government. They have governments around the world who have been bought off by us so they'll cooperate, share information about what you're doing or where you're working, what you're earning, where you're going. And you'll always hear all these liberals and even some conservatives. Just look at the Apple hearings this last week. They'll complain about big business. Big business is ripping you off here. They're not paying their taxes. Big business is trying to get away with something there. All this complaining, yet they ignore the biggest business of them all, which is government. Big business has never tried to directly take away my rights. They've never directly tried to legally limit the number of guns I can buy. But big business has tried to influence the government to limit my rights because business cannot do it itself, but government can. That's why you have to watch government, because it has the legal power to make you do what it wants. You can tell big business to take a hike. Big business has to pay attention to you because you're a customer. And if enough customers get fed up with it, well, they'll stop buying and there won't be any more of that big business. But you have no choice about shopping at the big government stores, no matter how shabby they are inside, no matter if the customer service sucks. Doesn't matter if they don't have the color you want. Tough. It's government. The only game in town. If you don't want to shop there, too bad. We'll take your money anyway. What we do have, though, is to vote. And just like big business, we vote with our money. At Walmart, you can cast your vote about government during elections. But you have to vote. Just like you keep shopping at Walmart. When you do that, you're telling them you like what they're doing by giving them your money. If you don't vote or you continue voting in the same people who are violating your rights, that's what you're telling government, is you agree with it. You're telling them, yeah, hey, keep violating my rights because I don't care enough to try and vote you out. This is what I mean by thinking for yourself, thinking about the situation we have in this country, how government-centric everything has become. We have too many people wanting to tell the rest of us what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. We're already up on the last break here on the Patrick Riggins Show. When we come back, we'll have our little special Memorial Day segment coming up. Don't miss it here on the Patrick Riggins Show. Be with us. Well, we'll be back in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI and the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. This Monday, in case you've been asleep, is Memorial Day. Now we have government officials, military officers, and yes, even misguided American citizens. They'll give speeches, pontificate on how our soldiers have lost their lives in war, where they're in fact fighting for freedom, fighting to protect our way of life. If you're on Facebook and the internet in general, it'll be littered with memes and postings reminding us, quote, freedom isn't free, unquote. All this will be going on because somehow it makes people feel better about themselves and their country, but unfortunately, all of this is fake. Now, the sentimentality, for the most part, the sentimentality is sincere. People really want to believe these soldiers dying overseas are fighting to defend our country, fighting for our way of life, and to protect our freedom and liberty because, again, as it will be posted over and over, freedom isn't free. But they aren't. They are fighting because our government wants to tell another country how it should run its internal affairs, just like it does to us back here in our own country. And it's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, to be told the reason we aren't appreciated in this world is partly because it's our fault. Deep down, you know this to be true. Even the most dyed-in-wool military soldier knows he or she isn't fighting for American freedom. They are fighting for the American government, not the citizens, the government. Not freedom, the government. Here's a quick clip to drive that home.
Well, at least they died for a good cause.
What cause was that?
Freedom?
Flush out your hit, you new guy. You think we waste goods for freedom? This is a slaughter.
Exactly right. Freedom isn't sending you across the seas to fight in a foreign land. Freedom isn't telling you to drone strike targets resulting in innocent people being killed. Collateral damage, that's the sterile way to say you're killing innocent human beings. People's whose only crime is being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But don't worry, President Obama knows it's happening, and he loses sleep over it. Does that help the fact the United States government sanctioned and carried out the killing of one of your relatives if you live over there? No. Well, sorry. President is losing sleep. That's as close to an apology as you're going to get. Doesn't really bring that person back, though, does it? But we'll mourn over people killed in this country by crazies with a gun or pressure cookers, innocent children being killed in unjustifiable attacks. But if it happens in another country, if it's another mother's child who just happens to be in the area when a drone strike occurs, oh, well, collateral damage. Let's go to soccer practice. I'm not trying to denigrate the sacrifice that has been made by our soldiers who have fought valiantly in wars, in these conflicts, and even what we called police actions. What I want you to understand is we have been sending our soldiers to die or be seriously hurt, not for freedom, not for liberty for American citizens, but merely because the government says so. And yes, we were attacked on September 11th, but how many people have we killed since then in this so-called war on terror? Does killing other innocent humans, people who could be Americans were it not for the luck of the draw and they weren't born here, but fellow human beings nonetheless, does killing them make up for the people who died in 9/11? Do 2 wrongs make a right? Do 10 wrongs make a right? Well then, Patrick, I can hear some of you saying, what's the answer? What should have been done? Well, I'm not sure I have the answer for that. But I do know subjecting another country's citizens to the horrors of war, that's not it. Bringing the pain and anguish of family members dying for no reason other than living in a particular country at a bad time, that isn't the right thing to do, is it? When we have a psycho killer go on a shooting spree here in this country, we don't go kill their relatives who had nothing to do with it. We don't think the answer is killing more people and bulldozing their houses. That isn't the answer here, so how is it the correct answer in another place? If killing people who aren't threatening you in one place on the globe isn't right, then how can we justify it in another? We can't. But Patrick, those so-called innocent people we've been killing in drone strikes, those people who were the terrorists, they were hanging out with them. They're in on the whole thing as well. They're friends with the bad guys, so they know what these guys were up to. So, okay, well, by that reasoning, the people who started all this, 15 of those 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. The others were from Egypt, Lebanon, and the UAE. So I guess we should start killing their families, their friends in those countries, because they were seen with the hijackers before they came here. But, if we start violating the sovereignty of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they'll probably shut off our oil supply, so we won't do that. Look at how the rest of the world views our policies. We sit in judgment with the world's strongest military. No doubt, there's not one nation on this earth that we cannot soundly defeat. No one can stand up to us. Just not going to happen. But are we using this power wisely? We aren't. Our military is for defense of our country in the event of attack. And you'd say, but we were attacked on 9/11. Yes, we were. We were attacked, but we can't look at the world as if it started on September 11th, 2001. Take some time this weekend on Memorial Day. Google the United States and what we've been doing in Iran and the rest of the Middle East since the beginning of the last century. All the turmoil we've been involved in, and not just in the Middle East, but all around the world. The people who have died as a direct result of our intervention, of us installing puppet regimes, no matter the reason. What I want you to think about is Memorial Day. Take a moment to remember those soldiers who have needlessly died in wars our government insisted on fighting and still insists on fighting. If anything, these soldiers deserve an apology and a promise that we aren't going to do, that we are going to do everything in our power to make sure we stop this insane foreign policy, this slaughter of our soldiers and the people around the world. Make this Memorial Day the day you decide to become politically active, that you're going to work to get good people in office, people who respect other people's natural human rights, because supposedly we believe all men were created equal. All humans are created equal. So I don't have time for my normal sign-off, but most of your listeners know where to find me on the web anyway. What I want to do is tell you is have a safe and fun Memorial Day. Make this one count for something. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Saturday afternoon. There we go, at 4 p.m. right here on the Patrick Riggins Show, here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Join us again next week for another solid dose of truth. The Patrick Riggins Show, Saturdays at 4 on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.